Hi, my name is Randy Choi. I'm one of the founders of Thompson Tea. I'm here today to talk about hyperhidrosis and, in particular, my experience with a surgical procedure called ETS. It's basically to sever or to clamp off some of the nerves that really triggered these sweat events. Uh, I noticed my hyperhidrosis, which was cranial. It was basically a sweat band around my head when I was about 12, 13 years old. So I was like full blown in puberty. Prior to that, I was like a regular kid. Um, and my experience that I recall that really changed everything for me was I was in a bus headed towards a church camp. And I was about 12, 13. I was sitting next to this girl I had a crush on, and we stopped to go to the restroom at some bathroom restaurant. I can't recall exactly. It was on the way to Big Bear though. And when I got out of the van, even though it was fairly cold outside, I had sweat like all on my chest, and I was drenched, like pouring sweat off my forehead, the side of my head, and I just remember being a little horrified because a lot of the kids in the shuttle were like looking at me like, what happened to you? Are you okay? What's wrong? I'm like, and then that whole thing about are you okay? That was kind of like the question that I always hated because I got asked that so many times after that. So that's when I realized something was wrong because I knew I was sweating like a faucet was turned on. And from that point forward, I became extremely self-conscious about it because I started realizing it was really triggered by social events or stress events. And at that particular time, imagine being 13 year olds trying to comprehend that. I didn't understand what was going on. And so by the time I got to high school, I got a little bit of grip on it and realized I was different than everybody else. And I kind of just figured out ways to get around those situations. Eventually, I saw a billboard on the freeway, and it was one of those advertisements for sweaty palms. And so I called it, told him my situation. This particular doctor who practices out of Orange County, California, advised me that he had the perfect solution, which was this ETS procedure. And unfortunately, at the time, it was fairly new. It was about 2000 is when I first got exposed to this procedure, and I was not aware of all the side effects, and nor did the physician address any of them. He just talked about the positives, kind of glanced over some of the more hardcore side effects, um, but I just assumed it was your standard, disclaimer for any typical procedure. And I believe I was only in there for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, and immediately after the procedure, I felt like these episodes of kind of like phantom sweating. Or I think he called it ghost sweating, phantom sweating, and where I felt like I was sweating like crazy, and I'll touch it and be completely dry. So for about a week, it was weird. It was very strange, and being on the pain meds and so forth, I was kind of out of it. Didn't really feel anything, but I did not sweat. About the 8th or 9th day after the procedure is when I started noticing I started getting some sweat on my chest, which was really weird because I never really sweat on my chest or my torso area. And then as time went by, it got really out of control to the point where I was wearing 2 undershirts, and I wasn't really sure what was going on. I thought maybe something's wrong, so I would go back to the physician. The physician told me that it was a side effect of the ETS procedure, and of course, I was not aware of it at the time. Otherwise, I would have never done it because this particular side effect, compensatory sweat, CS for short, is just as bad or worse than my cranial hyperhidrosis. Um, I would have weird sweat patches like my chest. Eventually, I started getting a sweat patch right here on my shoulder blade, which is the strangest one because it would be literally just a little sweat pad right there. Just strange stuff. And beyond that, I started experiencing kind of a downshift in my energy, my life energy, my decision making. I would not be as confident in my decisions, or I would take a while, or second guess myself, which I never did prior to that. And I felt that it impacted my metabolism. It impacted my ability to be aware of everything around me. Again, I felt like I was like downshifted, literally like life energy again. That's the only way to explain it. And to this day, it is still possibly the worst decision I ever made in my life. Just because the side effects did not improve my life, it actually made it worse. And if anybody watching this, I would do your homework. I know things have changed. My understanding, they've gotten much more precise with the procedure, but my particular procedure was a cut. I did not do the clamps, and there's no reversal. And you really got to think about that. Especially now, there's just so much more information, and there's products out there like the Thompson Tea that can help your situation with depending on what kind of hyperhidrosis you're experiencing. One thing to keep in mind, you're not the only ones, because forever I thought I was the only one. I thought I was a freak, to be honest. And now there's actually groups out there. There's international organizations that are focused on this. There's pharmaceutical companies that are focusing on solutions. When in fact most of these are band-aids, but they probably will improve your quality of life, and ultimately that's what really matters. Well, there you go. This was the first of hopefully a series of video blogs we're going to do. I want to keep talking about ETS. I want to talk about the effects, what's happened to me, in my personal experiences, and we'll try to get other people's experiences on here as well. And forever, this is going to be continuing education, because this particular condition and the solutions that are out there is ever evolving. And hopefully, as this series continues, we'll expose and address many of the issues in this sweaty world of hyperhidrosis.